Hello and welcome to the Awaken Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Kaki Lee, and my mission is to share the love and wisdom of inspiring women from around the world who have gone through adversity and turned their pain into purpose. Today, I'm excited to share the love and wisdom of love and life coach and the host of the Love Life Connection podcast, Veronica Grant, who is joining me all the way from New Jersey in the United States. Welcome, Veronica.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Before we dive in, what I'd really like to know is what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think for me, in my work, the idea of like feminine and masculine and balancing the two energies, come up a lot. And at least in the dating space, sometimes feminine or being feminine or feminine energy gets misconstrued as being passive, as giving power away, particularly to the masculine energy. And I just don't, I mean, that's not what feminine energy is. So to me, when I think of the awakened feminine, I think of, yes, being in your feminine, but also being within your power and not giving it away in the form of being passive or, oh, let's just see how he feels,
Yeah.
and really not like taking the lead in the sense of what masculine energy might do, but just allowing someone maybe in the masculine energy to be in your presence, so there's a lot of just power, a lot of femininity kind of combined in that.
Yeah. So it's really like a beautiful balance of both of those energies. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that definition. So let's dive into your journey, Veronica. Can you share with us? I know you're a love and life coach. So, it'd be really great if you can share with us what you were doing before you jumped onto this path and what, led you down this path. Did you have any spiritual awakening moments or any aha moments that, pushed you towards this path?
Yeah, so there's a few things that happened. One, I've always been interested in personal development. When I was, I don't know, 11, 12, my mom gave me a book about puberty. That was her way of what was going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And obviously, like the book, there was obviously the section about all the physical changes I would be going through as a girl. But also, it talked a lot about the emotional development. And I just remember reading that book over and over and over again. I was fascinated by what was going to happen. Not, and again, not just physically, but just emotionally, what was going on. And I don't know, I just remember reading that book all the freaking time. Also, I read Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I don't know if
Mm.
you have those over
Yes,
in the
yes.
UK.
I used to love reading them as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I wasn't reading like Chicken Soup for the teen soul or for the kid soul. I was reading like Chicken Soup for the mother soul, Chicken Soup for the cancer survivor soul, just like everyone's soul. I was reading Chicken Soup books for because I just loved like this idea of growing and growth and self inquiry. I had like a book of quotes that I would just, or not like a book, like a journal that I would just collect quotes, whether it was like from a movie or a TV show or a book or whatever. And I just would read through it just to feel inspired and to inspire me to turn inward. And I don't know, I just always, always loved it. It might be like the inner Sagittarius in me, not sure.
Yeah.
So that was going on. At the same time, though, I had a really rough journey with my relationship to my body. All the women in my family were always dieting, always trying to lose weight, always commenting on other women's or girls' bodies. And so I really internalized that. And so I can remember going on my first diet when I was like 10 years old and just really believing that if I looked a certain way, then I could, be good enough, I could be loved, I could be accepted. And then as I got older, that very much translated to if I'm skinny enough, if I look good enough, then I can have any guy, any relationship that I want. So I had these two parallel tracks going on pretty much my whole life, or at least as long as I can remember. And then when I, was in my 20s and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, my stuff with my body image had healed a lot. I wouldn't say I was totally, over it. I don't know if we ever really are, but
Yeah.
I had healed a lot. And so I had been teaching a lot of fitness and yoga classes. And a lot of my students were coming to me saying like, oh, Veronica, I had like a brownie sundae last night. So work me hard or whatever. And I was thinking, that's not really why I want you to be coming to my spin class and moving your body. And so So that kind of stuff kept happening. And I was talking to a friend about it, and she was like, well, you could be like a health coach. And I was like, a what? She's like, a health coach. And so she sent me to one of her friends' websites who had become a health coach. And I had been thinking about doing this fitness thing full time, but I'd also thought, gosh, it'd be exhausting going from class to class to class to class to
Mm.
class. And I kept doing the math of like, A, how much could I actually work out in a single day? Like, how many classes could I actually teach? How much could I actually make from each of these classes? And I just couldn't get the math to add up.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to be in that industry. And she was like, well, why don't you be a health coach? Because then you can do that, coupled with your fitness. And I was just like, oh my God, this is freaking brilliant. Of course, I had no idea what it actually meant to be a coach, how to get clients, how to start a business like that. I was completely blind to, which I'm actually kind of glad, because I think if I had known, I would have never done it. Because, the business journey
Yes.
is a whole other thing, which is, very
Yeah.
challenging, as I'm sure you know. Um, I got my health coaching certification, and I was, well on my way, and I was, writing blogs, trying to, make it work, and nothing just felt easy. Nothing just felt like in flow. And I was really struggling. At this point, I had already quit my job because I had moved across the country with my then boyfriend, who luckily became my husband. And so I basically used like all the savings that I had to work with this life and business coach. Her name's Hillary Rubin. And um, I don't even know what we were talking about, but I just kind of said in passing, I was like, like all these women, they come to me in my health coaching business, but they want to lose weight because either their husbands are skinnier than them, and they just feel self-conscious. They don't want to have sex with them, or they don't want to date because they quote unquote look like this or feel like this, or they want to lose weight before they date again. I was like, just all these people are saying this kind of stuff to me, and it just really frustrates me, because I'm like, that's just so backwards. Like, it's never going to work like that in terms of a relationship. And so I was talking about that, and then I was talking about how all my friends want my dating advice. They want me to look at their profile. And so at the same time, like, health coaching was just not feeling inspiring. Like, I would send my blogs out Thursday mornings, and it'd be like Wednesday night, and I would just be like, oh God, I don't know what to write. Ugh. And then I was thinking, God, if it's this horrible to write, it must be even more horrible to read. And so again, all of this kind of going on, and my coach is really, really, really into following the breadcrumbs. And that was like a line she just said over and over and over and over and over again. She's like, just follow the breadcrumbs, follow the breadcrumbs. And she's like, Veronica, these little comments about, losing weight before they date, all that kind of stuff, like, those are breadcrumbs. And I was like, oh, those are breadcrumbs. Okay. What are you saying? And she was like, well, have you considered being like a dating coach or relationship coach, or maybe like a dating health coach? She was, at that point I was still, trying to be a health coach. So we were trying to combine the two. And I was like, people don't hire dating coaches. That's not a thing. And she was like, oh, it's very much a thing. And so she sent me to the website of just a few, relationship and dating coach. And I was like, oh yeah, it does appear to be a thing. And so I just pretty much overnight switched. I wrote an email to my list, and I was like, look, like, this is what I'm gonna be talking about. If that's not, an area in your life that you're, worried about or focused on, I totally get it. You can unsubscribe below, but this is what I'm gonna talk about. And I don't know. I don't remember how many unsubscribes I got, but it wasn't that many.
Yeah.
And then I just kept talking about this, and I mean, it just hasn't stopped since.
Yeah, I love that. And, I think, like you were saying, that most women have this programming where they have to look a certain way to be loved. So can you talk a bit more about that for us? Like, how, for you had the dieting going on from young and having to look a certain way. Is there, are there any particular things that you found that are common within women that makes them get that programming, I guess?
Yeah. So I think as women, it's really hard, if not impossible, to have not internalized the patriarchy in some degree. And what I mean by that is, all these commercials or all of these things that even sometimes men directly say to women, like on the apps or in relationship, about women's bodies or how they are supposed to look. Even like all these like before and after pictures of like, 16 weeks and I lost 16 pounds or whatever it is.
Mm.
All of that is the patriarchy, right? Because who decided what beauty is? Who decided what the quote unquote gold standard is? And there's not like one, when I say the patriarchy, I don't mean like one specific man is like up in some tower, like deciding all of this stuff. This is just like the system that we live in.
Yeah.
And we've internalized it in the sense of like, oh, I'm supposed to look like this, or oh, it's not good to be in a larger body. When in fact, like being in a larger body has nothing to do with health markers in terms of like what actually makes someone healthy or not
Mm.
healthy. But we've equated, being healthy, being beautiful, being all of these things with being in a certain body size. And it's just really, really detrimental. I don't have to like go on about how detrimental it is. I'm sure
Mm.
many people can probably relate. But it's just all internalized programming. There's a good chance like our parents and our grandparents and their grandparents were all internalized with this kind of thinking. And then so it's passed down to us through generations, through our upbringings, but then it's also just a message that we receive over and over and over and over again. And even as like the anti-diet culture has grown, um, I still think there's like very subtle messaging that we still get every single day about what beauty is, what we're supposed to look like, what being skinny means, what being fat means, all of those things.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because I've got two young girls. I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 6-year-old asked me about dieting, the other day, and it freaked me out because I'm
Yeah.
like, why are you asking me about this? But it was because she heard something on the TV.
Yeah.
So I had to explain to her, you don't need to die. Like, it's just so ingrained in our culture and our society that, even my 6-year-old will be asking me about dieting. So I want to
Totally.
ask you, yeah, it did scare me. But
Yeah.
that's another conversation. But I want to ask you, because you were saying that from young, your family was, judging other people's bodies, or, they make comments around that. How did you yourself kind of do all that healing in that area of your life?
Yeah. So what happened with me, I would say there's two big areas of my life where, you know, I was finally able to grapple this. And at least one was by accident. So in 2008, no, not 2008, 2012, I quit my job to work on the Obama campaign full time.
Oh,
And for anyone who's ever worked on any kind of political campaign, it's your life. It is your life. It's not like, I mean, forget the whole like 9 to 5 or 40-hour work week thing. We're talking like, I mean, I don't even know. I was working from about 8 a.m. until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Sometimes I would get Sunday mornings off. Like it was intense.
that is.
And so it was the first time in my life where I literally did not have time to count my calories and portion out my food and go to the gym like I quote unquote should.
Mm,
I'm not saying what I was doing was healthy because like I was eating a lot of fast food and just the food that volunteers would bring to the office, which often was pizza and brownies and
yeah.
maybe a salad to be somewhat healthy. But I just, I couldn't do what I did before because there were just literally not time. And also I had no energy to do it either. And so that happened. And then the campaign ended, because there was an
Yeah.
election. And I just had in my mind, like, I was so tired during the campaign. I mean, for obvious reasons, I was so tired. I remember like I would be knocking on people's houses to see if they had voted or if they're registered to vote. And like it was clear that they had just been cozied up on their couch, on a lazy Saturday afternoon. And I would just look at them like with this kind of longing I have never experienced before in my life and I never experienced since. So I was so tired and I just thought, okay, the election's over. When this job ends, I think I can just probably lay on the couch for like a weekend and then I'll be good. Like I can just go back and, find a job and like my energy will be back and I'll feel rested and all those things. And it turns out it took a lot longer than a weekend for, you know, me to feel somewhat normal again. And so I was exhausted. And then what also was happening is I was laying on the couch after the campaign and I was, scrolling Instagram and Facebook. And I had these friends who, well, there were a couple, she was a vegan and she was posting like all of this food that she was making and she was trying to start up her vegan blog and she was just posting all this food that she was making and it looked so good and she just loved eating it. She loved talking about it. She loved the taste of it. Just everything just was like, this is so wonderful. It's nourishing. And I was just like, I want to relate to food like that, because before that, food had been very transactional. It was bad if I was already at my calorie limit, and if I wasn't at my calorie limit, it was just still transactional, because it was like, oh, well, I need to go, walk 30 minutes so I can earn
Mm.
that glass of wine or whatever it was.
Yes.
And so I didn't have the energy even still to relate to food like that again, because that's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. And I was still exhausted from the campaign job. And so I was looking at this person's blog and I was just like, that's how I want to relate to food. And so instead of thinking, okay, I want to relate to food that way, my brain went, well, I must be a vegan then, because that's how vegans relate to their food. And so I became a vegan. Now, to be fair, it wasn't like the biggest stretch, because I had been a vegetarian on and off for most of my life since I was like in high school. So to be a vegan wasn't that big of a deal, because I already hadn't been eating meat for most of the past 10 years. So I became vegan, and it really did work for a while. Like it was fun to make food. It was fun to like, how can I veganize like macaroni and cheese and hot dogs? Like, how
Yeah.
can I veganize all of these things that feel like they're not vegan foods at all? And it was delicious. And this was like, yes, this is exactly how I want to relate to food. But then I couldn't eat one of my favorite foods, which was sushi. I love sushi. I
Mm.
could eat it all day long. It's in my Instagram profile. It's in my media bio. Like, I just love sushi. I love it so much. Um, I could eat it every day, literally, and I would never get sick of it. And so I really started to miss sushi. And so then occasionally I would have like sushi, but I would feel like I was sneaking it in, or I would feel bad or guilty for eating it because it wasn't like in this vegan diet that I was doing. So then I would try to make vegetarian sushi or eat vegetarian sushi, but it really wasn't like hitting the spot.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this feels like I'm dieting again. This feels like how I used to relate to food, and I wasn't available for that
Mhm.
anymore. And so then that's when I was like, okay, so I can see how being a vegan helped me get to a place where I'm relating to food in a way I want to be relating to food, but now it's served its purpose, because now I'm just back into that whole like transactional, secretly eating, dieting kind of
Mm.
mentality. And so that's when I was like, I'm done being a vegan. I'm not going to be a vegan anymore. And so by dropping that label, I was still able to then like eat sushi and eat whatever I wanted, but still have that more nourishing um, relationship with food, rather than that transactional
Yeah.
relationship with food. And so that happened. And then along the same timeline was when I became a health coach, and also when I became a certified yoga instructor. And both, for anyone listening who ever goes through any kind of like yoga training or health coach, or really just life coach training, or any kind of like healing, helping modality, part of the training process is also like being your own best client.
Yeah.
And so during that process, I really was able to connect on an even deeper level with my relationship to my body, my relationship to food, my relationship to spirituality, all that kind of stuff. And so that really helped me to take all of this stuff a level deeper. And then all of a sudden, like I just not all of a sudden, that's not true. It was not all of a sudden, but over time, I was just able to relate to myself in a deeper way. And I also started attracting a different kind of, romantic partner. It wasn't just like, a friend with benefit situation, or someone who didn't really take me seriously, or someone
Mm.
who only, wanted to have sex, or whatever it was. And I think there's a direct correlation there, because I was able to connect deeper with myself. I was able to then connect deeper with other people, including potential romantic partners. And that just opened my world up to, who was who was available to me, but also who I was available to as well.
Yeah, I love that, and totally agree. When you do the whole coaching certifications and all that, you do connect it with yourself so much deeper. I found for me, it was that period of time was like the biggest growth period, like in a short space of
Yeah,
time. Usually you do all the bits and pieces, little bits of work here and there, but I think everything's so concentrated and so focused. It's like it's
yeah,
great.
totally.
Yeah, and I love that it is so true that when you connect deeper with yourself, you really do find you attract different things into your life because you're doing the inner work, right? So,
Totally.
which leads me to ask you, because you're a love coach, because we talked about body image and things like that. So, how did you then, what's that special thing that you have that led you to become a love coach? So, there must have been something along the way which kind of went, okay, why do people keep asking you about relationship advice? You must have gone through something to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I really like, I haven't talked about it specifically, but I did really struggle, in relationships. And, that's I mean, part of the reason is, um, part of the reason is I only was able to attract people and connect with people on a very superficial level. And so even though I consciously only ever wanted something serious, like I mean, from the time that I was like in sixth grade, I actually documented this in a 6-part series on my podcast. But from the time I was sixth grade, I really just wanted to meet my soulmate.
Wow.
And I don't know where I learned that concept from. I think, I think that maybe one, I was reading a lot of Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And so obviously there's like a lot of love
Yeah.
stories and that kind of stuff in those books. So I think that was part of it. I think also part of it was that, I learned to receive love and to connect and get admiration and attention through my body. And so, but I think like intuitively, I knew that like that wasn't really enough. And so I think from a young age, I just wanted someone to be that rock, be that unconditional love for me because I didn't feel it somewhere else. So I think it was just a lot of things combined that I've always wanted to have that. Like even when I was, in my 20s, I was never looking for like a one night stand or something casual. Like I just don't understand the concept of that. I know some people want it and that's awesome. I,
Mm.
like no shame or judgment or anything.
Yeah.
But for me, I just emotionally was never ever able to do that. So I think that um, I don't know if it's like a spiritual thing or like a karma/dharma thing, but I feel like relationships actually don't come easy to me. And I think I've learned a lot. And so I think that actually makes me a better teacher. When I first thought about coaching, I thought, okay, well, maybe I can help people just stay motivated and stay on top of their plans and whatever, because I'm really good at that. Like I can set some sort of plan and I am I can hold myself accountable and like I can knock out a to-do list like nobody's business, and I cannot procrastinate and I can, prioritize tasks and be productive and all that kind of stuff. But like that comes naturally to me. So I'm not really able to teach that, which I learned. People are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just wake up and do it. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
just one step, just do it.
Yeah.
But like with relationships, because I had so much struggle and with connecting with myself and connecting with others, like I really have learned what not to do, why we might do things that aren't good for us, even though we know that, but we do it anyways. Like I understand a lot more of the nuances and like the step-by-step approaches to feeling more confident to talking to a stranger or feeling more confident to be vulnerable with someone or share what you need or state a boundary or ask for what you want or whatever it is. Because I've had to literally just learn that like I was, like a 5-year-old, then I think that makes me a better teacher because I'm able to then turn around and be like, oh yeah, I understand why you want to text that person back, even though you know they were a jerk. I totally get it. So
Yeah.
let's talk about how we can not do that.
Yeah.
So I'm able to meet them where they are rather than patronize and be like, why would you want to text that person back? I mean, gosh, he was a jerk to you. Like, really? Like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
not going to be very conducive for a healing environment.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. So, I would love for you to share more love and wisdom with us, Veronica. Can you share with us a particular experience that you've been through that you found the most challenging, but actually led to your biggest breakthrough?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I think that the time, that I was sharing about, being, after the Obama campaign,
Mm.
um, to me, that feels, it was like a very good, but also very hard time in my life because, I was exhausted. Some of my not so great qualities came out, during the campaign. I mean, not to make excuses, but obviously I was stressed, I was tired. It's a high pressure job, all of those things. And so I think, but all of that kind of served as a reckoning. And I had done a lot, like I talked about the story about being a vegan and then not being a vegan and then going through my own, process, through my teacher or yoga teacher and health coach certification. And I was attracting a new kind of relationship, a new kind of person. And then I had, after the Obama campaign, I had moved to Washington, D.C. And, I was living my best life. I was having so much fun. I was meeting a lot of people. I finally lived in a big city enough to where I could do online dating, and it wasn't like the same 5 people on the apps all the time. This is also before everyone and their mother was on online dating. It was like,
Yeah.
anyways, and so I was just having a great time. And then through a friend of a friend, I met this person. I refer to him as Banker Dude. And he just totally like swept me off my feet. He was just, I mean, he was very like smooth for sure. But also, I just worked on the Obama campaign, and then I had a new job in politics, and everyone knows that, until you become a politician yourself and you're writing yourself a bestseller, like you don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so this guy worked in a bank, hence the name Banker Dude, and he would just like wine and dine me. And we would go to these restaurants, and he would drop hundreds of dollars on like bottles of wine and appetizers, and like, oh, let's just try this one too. And like, to be honest, between all of that and just me feeling good and be like, oh yes, this stuff is actually working. Like I'm attracting like really great person. I really, whatever.
Mm.
Um, I just got really, really wrapped up in it. And then we had gone on a few dates, and then we had a date planned. And maybe about an hour or two before our date, or before he was supposed to pick me up, he texts me. He was like, hey, so I actually got, a little too drunk to pick you up. I was hanging out with my friends, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, my heart just like dropped into my stomach. And then he texted me right away again, and he was like, but I was thinking this, maybe just get a cab and come out to Virginia. I was living in DC at the time. Come out to where I live, and I'll pay for the cab. And that way you can just come out with me and my friends, and you can meet everyone. See? So it's like a win-win. You actually get
Yeah.
to meet people. Isn't that a good thing? And I pretended to be okay with that, even though like that's not really what I wanted to do. And I'm like very reserved, and I'm shy, and I'm not like a big going out kind of person. So
Yeah.
of course, like I was acting like quiet and shy the whole night, and he was like confused about that, because that's kind of how I am with big groups of people.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we did, and it was fine, whatever. And then we had, I don't remember the exact timeline if we saw each other again after that. But then we did at some point have another date planned. And of course, he texted me and he was like, hey, got too drunk, can't hang out. And this time there was no quick follow-up text of like, hey, come hang out with me and my buddies. There was just nothing. And I didn't hear from him until like, I think that was like a Saturday. I don't think I heard from him until like Tuesday, when he called to apologize and basically did what he should have done, which was he called, apologized, owned it, and was like, I really think I've got some stuff to work on. I thought I was ready for a relationship, but clearly like I'm not, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, look, like being heartbroken or being upset, feeling rejected would be totally par for the course. But like I went beyond that. It was like, oh, why me? I've done all this stuff and nothing's changed. And it was just like really eroding on my worthiness, as opposed to just feeling sad and rejected about
Mm.
it. And just, feeling really, really sorry for myself. And then that brought me to writing this like email to him where I was like, I believe in you when you figure this out. Like, I'm here for you. I'll be waiting. I mean, like, I don't want to call myself pathetic, because I was doing the best I could at the time. And I don't really, I encourage my clients not to like beat up on themselves. So, but, definitely not my strongest or best move. And so I was having this moment where I was actually in my bathroom. I was going out with some friends, I think, and I was bawling. I just could not stop crying. I was so upset about this. At the same time, I was like trying to put mascara on, which, don't at the same time, not a good idea. It was did not go well. Anyways, I was talking to one of my guy friends at the time, and my guy, this guy, he can be a little, he can call you out, let's say. And he was like, damn it, Veronica, you are pissing me off. He should have been so lucky to have gone on a date with you. And you can even stay sober. And he just kept going on and on. And I was just kind of like, what, whose side are you on? Like, I felt like he was, taking this guy's side rather than my side. And then we got off the phone, and then, I just had what I call my bathroom floor moment, where I literally just sat on my bathroom floor and just cried and like tried to figure out what was going on. And then it just like hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, like this whole time I have been outsourcing my worthiness to other people. I outsource my worthiness to my body size. I outsource my worthiness to the amount of calories I eat in a day. I outsource my worthiness to whether or not someone liked me, and if they liked me back. I outsource my worthiness to how well I performed at my job, like just everything. My worthiness, like I had no like control. I had no sovereignty over my worthiness. And so I was just like, okay, that's really what the root of all of this. Like, it's not really about my relationship with food or men or anything else. I mean, like, that's certainly where it manifests, but this is like the core issue. This is the core wound.
Mm.
And so once I was able to really figure that out, that's when I think things changed, but felt a little bit more permanent. Now, not to say that I don't struggle with body. I mean, I just had a baby. My body's changed a lot. And I would be lying if I was like, oh, I'm totally fine with how my new body looks. You know what I mean? But it doesn't bump up against my worthiness the way it used to.
Mm.
Because I just realized that this is what it was all about. And I just happened to manifest this wound through food, my body, and relationships.
Yeah. So, wow, that's a big lesson learned from just having this relationship where this guy didn't take you seriously to you going, oh shit, that's the issue that you've been having all this time. So it really comes down to that self-love and really finding that love within you so that you do feel worthy. So just um tailgating onto that, I want to ask you, like, self-worthiness, self-love, what does that mean to you now that you've worked on everything, and what your worth is determined by you and not by someone else?
Yeah, I think these are interesting terms because obviously, like, I shouldn't say obviously, but I do inner child work with my clients, which basically is, um, I help my clients find love not by, okay, let's figure out how you can text this or write this in your profile or flirt better or whatever.
Yeah.
It's more about, okay, how is that inner 10-year-old showing up? So for me, for example, it's like, how is that inner 10-year-old showing up in the sense of like my inner 10-year-old believes she has to look a certain way in order to get love, right? And so obviously you can imagine how as a 20 something or 30 something year old, if I'm showing up believing I have to look a certain way, you can imagine what kind of relationship or what kind of person, that might attract. So, while of course, like the work I do, and I think the work that pretty much every coach and personal development person does is about self-love, is about self-worthiness, like those phrases are so overused. It's like, what does it even mean? You know what I mean? Like I
Mm.
get all the time, like people say love yourself or like love yourself first before, you go out. It's like, what does that even mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so I think for me, um, it it really comes down to, well, okay, here's what I think. I think that boundaries and our communication is the application of our self-worthiness and our self-love. So I think that's a helpful way to think about it because, you can go out and like write yourself a love letter. You can give yourself a bubble bath. You can buy yourself flowers. You can do all of these things that Instagram says to you is self-care or self-love or whatever you want to call it. But then, like, if you're in a relationship with someone and they're kind of treating you like dirt or putting you, or if they're breadcrumbing you or um, gaslighting you or whatever, and then we try to make excuses like, oh well, this is how relationships are, or this is just how relationships are hard, so they're not like how they are in the movie, so this is just what so we try to justify to ourselves why, like, it's okay to put up with all this crap. Like, to me, there's a huge disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think that's really rampant. And so I can't remember your exact question anymore, but
Yeah.
basically
What does self-love and self-worthiness mean to you?
yeah, it really, honestly, like, it just, to me, like, it means like the degree of crap you're willing to put up with. And I know
Mm.
that, like, someone listening to this, no one's going to be like, oh yeah, I put up with crap. I love putting up with crap. Like, nobody's saying that,
Yeah.
right? Nobody's saying that. But like, I think we have to be really honest with ourselves. Like, I know you say that and I know you don't want to put up crap, but how much crap are you really putting up with?
Yeah.
And I think that when we can be really honest with ourselves in that respect, then we can look at, oh yeah, I mean, like, yes, I say I want to love myself, and I say I do love myself, and I say I'm confident, and all these things that we want to believe about ourselves. But then, like, do our actions really add up? And I would say 9 times out of 10, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't really add up. And so I think the bridge to that really is inner child work, because, again, like you can say, all right, well, next time I'm going to listen to those red flags, or next time I'm going to, say what I need, or set the boundary, or say no, or whatever it is. Like we can tell ourselves that. That's great. Um, but like then you're really using willpower to get something done, to change something.
Yeah.
And willpower just doesn't really work. And I know that because I've been on and off the diet train for,
Yeah.
a long time in my life. So, yeah, like does if you count your calories and like, you know, eat less than you expend, are you going to lose weight? I mean, barring any kind of like physical conditions, yeah, you will lose weight for sure. I mean, biology is biology, science is science, right? But we know that doesn't work, because if you don't know why you're eating, then you have a bad day, or you have a breakup, or you have a fight, or you're tired, or whatever, and then you're going to eat a bunch of ice cream, or for me, it'd be like a copious amount of sushi or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then it's like, boom, you're off, and you tell yourself these stories about how you suck and how you can't do anything. And then you feel bad, and then you eat even more. And then just like the cycle continues, right? So you really have to figure out why you're eating if you want to get emotional eating like under control, not just to go put yourself on a diet. And same thing, if you're putting up with crap in a relationship, again, you can tell yourself all of these things that you quote unquote should do or shouldn't do. And yeah, it might work, but then sure, at some point you will get triggered, something will happen, and you'll just really need to feel loved. Or you'll just really need to get that equivalent of like a like or a heart on Instagram, and
Yeah.
you'll put up with crap again. So you have to ask yourself, why do I put up with crap? Why do I think this is okay? And that's where inner child healing comes in. And that's where we have to look at our 5-year-old self or our 10-year-old self and ask ourselves, why do I walk on eggshells in this relationship? Is it because I had to walk on eggshells with my parents? Or why do I feel like I don't know how to connect deeply with men? For me in that case, that would be because I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to be. I never saw what vulnerability or intimacy looked like. It was just look good and you'll be liked. It's
Yeah.
that simple, which is not, but like that's what I would have known anything different had I not,
Yeah.
done a deeper look at things. Um, so again, I think I lost track of what your question is, but I think that answered it.
Yeah. No, it's great because it is, asking you what self-love means, and it is, how much crap are you putting, really looking at how much crap you're putting up with, and really setting the boundaries and healing that inner core, inner child wound, to stop yourself from keep doing those things that you're doing. So it's great. And, no amount of bubble baths is going to help if you're putting up with crap, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you can give yourself all the self-care and, go walk out in nature, but if you're not healing the inner child wound, like as you're saying, then you're not going to be loving yourself really. So
Mhm.
yes, thank you for that. So I want to ask you, Veronica, having gone through all the stuff that you've gone through, what are some, really tools that were really helpful in, healing yourself? I mean, you talked about inner child healing. Is that something that helped you on your journey?
Absolutely. I think inner child healing is like, I mean, look, there's no silver bullet, but I think inner child healing is, I just think as adults, we're all playing out unresolved wounds from childhood. And the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. So when I was going through a really rocky relationship in my 20s, it just like rocked me to my core, because I was just had been in lust, in love, whatever. I mean, not really love, but you know what I mean, with this
Yeah.
guy. And like I knew deep down that he did not feel the same way about me, even though we were together. I just like had this hope that like I could get him to love me. I could get him
Yeah.
to like me the way I wanted him to. But I knew like it wasn't there. And so, but I was like refusing to admit that to myself or let myself see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And so it just like really sent me through this emotional tailspin. So much so that for the first time it sent me into therapy. And I don't even know if she was a therapist. I think she called herself like a spiritual guide counselor. I don't know. It wasn't in the
Yeah.
US, so I don't know what like the regulations
Okay.
are, what she called herself versus her certifications. But the point is that that was the first time I was ever asked about my upbringing. And like, again, like you don't know what you don't know. Like when you're raised and you're like 5 years old and you have to walk on eggshells, for example, because something you say might set off mom or dad's temper, you just assume that everyone's like that. Like, how would you know anything's different,
Yeah.
you know? And so, um, and I was in my 20s before I figured this out. So I was, she was asking about my family, and I was like, well, I was talking about my family, but whatever, I'll just tell her. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but I was just telling her about how, yeah, like a lot of family meals were pretty quiet, a lot of clinking of, the silverware. And really, it was very rare that there would be a conversation more than just like the logistics of like who needed to go where the next day and be picked up what time and, all that kind of stuff. And she was like, okay, so your family didn't really have a lot of emotional closeness or emotional vulnerability. And I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. I didn't even know that. Um, and then, I was telling her about some other stuff, and she's like, and it sounds like there weren't any like clear boundaries set either. So there wasn't clear communication. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah. I guess that yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That makes sense too. And then this just began to show me like how some stuff I just didn't learn. And then B, um, what I was then trying to get from a relationship that I didn't get from, my family of origin. And I just want to be really clear, like, I'm not blaming my parents. I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're bad parents. Like, they are just doing what they knew how to, they're doing the best they can. Parenting is hard, all that kind of stuff. And this is never a referendum on them as people or them as parents. It's just, yeah, this is how it was. This is what I learned. This is what I didn't learn. And now I just need some of it's going to be good learning and I want to stick with it. And some of it I need to unlearn. And that's fine. We all go through it. We all have our own stuff with our family. And so anyone listening, sometimes people tend to have two reactions, either like, oh my God, I totally see it. Yes, I'm playing this thing out with, from mom or dad. Or some people are like, go on the defensive. They're like, oh, but they had a really hard childhood too, or they were just trying to figure it out, or oh, they were stressed because they had 6 kids or whatever. And it's never a referendum really about them. It's just like, this is how it was. And this is just what or how it might have affected you. So let's just like, figure that out, figure out what coping tools you used. For me, like my coping tool was, just don't ask for anything because, otherwise you might be called selfish or otherwise you might, set off someone's temper. And so I just learned, okay, you just don't want to be too much. Like you don't want to, you want people to like you. So just don't ask for what you want or say your opinion or whatever. And then I needed to learn, oh, like that actually is not a foundation for a healthy romantic partner. And so I just had to learn how to do that. And that's all it is. It's just, that's just what it was and now what it is. And then the new thing that I need to learn. So, I mean, I just think, and from there, like, yeah, sure. There's like things that can help you to connect to the inner child and heal the inner child. There's meditation, there's journaling, there's, tapping, like there's all of these things that we can do. But I think ultimately it comes back down to how can you reconnect to the inner child? How can you give her what she needs? How can you teach her what she needs to learn so that she doesn't keep carrying on these old patterns that, yes, might have served her at the time when she was, 5 years old, 10 years old, but they're just not serving her anymore.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, Veronica, I mean, as a personal development lover, is it safe to say that you love reading books?
Well, ever since my my new baby came along, I've not been reading as much as I have.
Yes, I
I
totally agree.
actually, like I often get asked like, oh, what books should I read? And look, I just hesitate to like be like, oh my God, I have like a bunch of books. Because obviously like I love learning and I think books and reading just in general are important, not just like in terms of personal development, but just in terms of being like an educated human.
Yes.
At the same time, I just find, at least in this area, I think that many women are information overloaded. And so sometimes I think maybe instead of like reading a book, like maybe just like go outside and feel the sunshine on your face, the breeze on your face, listen to the birds sing, and just feel yourself experiencing that. you
Yeah.
know, because like ultimately, like everything that I'm doing, yes, it's about self-love, but it's also just about like connecting with yourself, because you can follow all of these dating rules or all these other rules that we quote unquote have to follow, but obviously don't really have to. But ultimately, like if you can make choices based on what feels best and right for you, um, then life is going to be so much better. So if you can just tune out all of the noise, tune out the shoulda, woulda, coulda, tune out the this is how you do this, da, 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 then I think the better off you'll probably be, and probably most of us will be.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. I want to ask you, if you could time travel to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
If I could, I think one of the biggest, I don't really, I don't know if I have regrets, so to speak, but I think I would probably travel back to my early 20s, mid 20s self and just be like, you're going to meet someone, just stop freaking out about it. Because I think that I uh, I think I missed out on some things just because like I was like, oh, I don't want to go to this thing. I want to go to that thing because someone might be there that I could, marry one day. And so I missed out on a lot of grad school experiences because I was like chasing these two guys down. And so, while like a lot of people that I went to grad school with are like really close with each other, and I was like on the periphery of that, but because I wasn't as
Mhm.
close with them, like I'm just kind of lost contact, but like a lot of them still all hang out. And
Yeah.
I just think it's my fault because I was just so focused on these other two other guys. And so I think I just, and they were like doing some weekend trip because we were living abroad at the time.
Mhm.
And so I just missed out on like, doing some trips around the region and seeing some things and getting to do some things. Um, so I think that I would probably go back to that time and just be like, you're going to meet somebody. It's okay. Just try to enjoy, you know,
Yeah.
what you can right now.
Yeah. And Veronica, I know like there's lots of people listening to us right now that, are in that space where they want to make some changes in their lives, but they're either stuck or they don't know, what to do next. What's some advice or recommendation or, something that you might be able to tell them just to help, get them along on their way to take the steps to create that life that they've always wanted to create?
I mean, I think inner child work's a great way to do that because again, like you have to ask yourself why. I mean, first of all, I don't think if you're asking yourself these questions, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're being practicing self-inquiry, I don't think you're really stuck. I think that's just kind of a belief. But I think that ultimately, like if you aren't taking the actions that would be good for you or that you deep down want to take, then I just think you just got to start asking yourself why, and that's always going to the answer will always root back to the inner child. And what is the inner child scared of happening, scared of not happening? How is she playing out in this? And so I think that and again, like, I mean, I talk about obviously inner child in the context of dating and relationships, but it affects all areas of your life. It affects your health, it affects your career, your finances, your friendships, all the things. And so I would just focus on the why and then try to see how you're feeling, what it reminds you of from like, way back when, and then
Yeah.
just notice what pattern you might be playing out.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And before we wrap up, Veronica, I'd love to know what is setting your soul on fire right now.
Hmm. I mean, just talking about this kind of stuff, really. I mean, I'm really passionate about it. Like, I don't think that the work I do is just about dating when there's so many big problems out in the world. I think that, yes, I'm talking about dating and I'm talking about relationships, which might seem frivolous, when we think about all the other things going on in the world. But I think really what I'm talking about is how can we deprogram ourselves from like, uh, just like this culture of like, um, not caring for our mental health and our needs and all that kind of stuff, but then also deprogramming the patriarchy, because we can see it happening on the macro and micro level. And so, um, I certainly don't have single-handed power to like change the patriarchy on the macro level, but like if one at a time I can encourage women to not play by those rules, then like it will, you know, get dismantled.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for the work that you do. Veronica, thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. If people want to find out more about you and how they can work with you, where should they go?
Yeah. So the best place to go is I have a workshop where I dive more into inner child work and how to begin this process. So you can grab that over at veronicagrant.com/workshop. And the workshop is called 5 Steps to Ending Overwhelm and Anxiety in Your Love Life. So I'll go into inner child work and kind of give you more examples of how it might be playing out in your life. And then also some steps to begin, shifting that.
Yeah.
And then I also have a podcast called The Love Life Connection, and you can listen to it probably wherever you're listening to this show. And on it, I also have women come onto the show and I'm coaching them, through inner child work process. And so if you're curious to hear what inner child coaching sounds like, then the podcast will also be a great resource. So either of those two places.
Great. I'll have all your details and any recommended resources available in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, thank you. And until next time, I love you, I believe in you, and you're worth taking that step to the life of your dreams.